live from DC after getting kicked out of Epstein press conference. Okay, hey everybody. So passersby might find this annoying, but that's okay. I'll try to keep my voice down, and it might be a little shaky. Can everybody hear me okay? I just want to make sure. So if a commenter could just confirm that you can hear me okay, that would be nice. Anybody out there, please just tell me that it sounds good. Okay, good. So yes, I'm in Washington, D.C. I'm right near Capitol Hill. And there was a Epstein press conference today, which I was invited to attend, believe it or not, by Ro Khanna's staff. Ro Khanna has introduced legislation with Thomas Massie to compel, purportedly anyway, the release of the so-called Epstein files. There are some big problems with that legislation that I actually documented after doing something shocking, which is reading the bill. I documented that yesterday on a Substack post here. And so yeah, I went to this press conference, and I didn't realize that there was going to be like a secondary press conference first, right? So there was a precursor press conference with Epstein survivors and Gloria Allred and Virginia Roberts Giuffre's stepbrothers and other people that I happened upon because I showed up early, and I went to that. And I just talked to, it was amazing. Everybody just got, I really do strive to maintain equanimity, composure. I'm not trying to be ostentatiously or gratuitously aggressive with anyone, but people can't tolerate any just basically critical questions at these functions. It's amazing. So they throw tantrums. I posted actually a video on X of like an hour ago or so of a lady who witnessed the exchange at the later press conference, which I'll get to. Okay. But at the initial press conference, I basically just went up to some of the speakers to talk to them. So there was one woman, Haley Robson, who was there, who is basically established to have been one of the recruiters for Epstein in the Palm Beach phase of the whole saga. And she essentially has admitted that she told girls to lie about their age, tell Epstein that they were 18, etc. But now she claims that she's a survivor and a victim. And she told me, for example, that she was groomed. She advised or instructed these other girls to lie about their age because she had been groomed. And also, I talked to Gloria Allred about how she had this press conference a few weeks ago with a purported Epstein survivor who I believe was either 26 or 27 years old, maybe even 28, mid to late 20s. And I asked her, don't you think there's an issue if a person like that is just getting generically classified as a victim because the public sees that generic victim designation and assumes it's additional evidence for the child sex trafficking theory, even though this is a woman in her 20s who was auditioning supposedly for Victoria's Secret as a model and met Epstein in his hotel room in Los Angeles and then claimed that Epstein groped her buttocks. So whether or not Epstein groped this woman's buttocks, it's still nothing to do with any kind of child sex trafficking allegation, right? And, Gloria Allred was actually engaging enough on the subject. And there's a woman at one point, I talked to this other woman, Teresa Helm, also about a similar issue because she was likewise an adult when she claims that she was victimized by Epstein and Maxwell. So I just was asking her questions about this, about don't you think there's some conflation here going on if you were an adult when you claimed that you were victimized or trafficked? And the public perception of this whole case is that there was this rampant child sex trafficking, right? Shouldn't this be more clarified to people or spelled out for the public? And, you could tell she didn't quite answer questions. So her PR person kind of interjected and told me what PR firm she was with, et cetera. But then this other woman came up to me, and I think this is on video. Like one of the people I was just with happened to get this on video. This other woman who wouldn't tell me what her name was. She asked, like, demands to know my name. Of course, I told her I have nothing to hide. She started to tug on my little press badge here. So I have this press badge here that I got from the White House that I was just using just to signify that I've been duly accredited as a journalist for events, just in case anybody wanted to know. I had been, again, like I said, specifically invited to this press conference. And so this woman was literally, she grabbed my badge and was tugging on it, yanking on it, like wouldn't let go. I was like, ma'am, can you please let go of my press badge? And she's like, no, she says I'm uh, disrespecting the victims or something like that. There was a new purported victim who I hadn't even really been familiar with before. I think her last name is Phillips. Is it Sarah Phillips? I think last name Phillips. Who similar thing, woman in her 20s, right? Who when the claimed victimization happened, shouldn't this be a little bit more clarified for people? I asked her, so you're saying that you're groomed when you were 21 or 22 years old, an adult? And she's like, yeah, you can be groomed at any age. So we just went up back and forth on that. I asked her, like, did you get any money from any of the settlements? She says that she got money from the JP Morgan settlement. I asked her how much. She says she won't tell me. Okay, fine. But this woman, like I don't know what her even role was. She must have been some PR person. Was literally tugging at my badge, like holding it. So I couldn't move. I was like, ma'am, can you please let go? And she eventually let go. So she's asking her what her name is and so forth. And she wouldn't tell me. So I talked to a bunch of people at that initial event, right? Initial press conference. And then there was the main press conference, which is where Thomas Massey and Ro Khanna were going to be appearing. And it turned out Marjorie Taylor Greene was there. I think Victoria Sparks was there. I saw her leaving. I didn't see her at the press conference, but she was apparently there. There may have been some other members of Congress there, but it was basically co-organized by Ro Khanna, Thomas Massey, and then Bradley Edwards, who's the main lawyer, or one of the very foremost lawyers, most longtime lawyers representing purported Epstein victims. He represented Virginia Roberts Giuffre. He now represents others. So they were like the organizers of the press conference, and the idea was that they were going to introduce newly unveiled Epstein victims, right? So at first I couldn't get into the main press conference, because the Capitol Police wouldn't let me in. They were saying, "Oh, it doesn't matter if you were invited." I was showing them the email that I got. I was telling them, like, I was told I was put on the list to allow me to get into this press conference. They're like, no. And finally, I noticed like a staffer person who then escorted me in for Ro Khanna staff. So I'm in the press conference, right? They go to the question session. I'm trying to get a question in. There's a million different questions I could ask. But because like Bradley Edwards is basically the one running the press conference, I figure I'll ask a question that's tailored to Bradley Edwards. And so finally he does call on me. I ask my question. I mean, you can find the video somewhere. I got texts from people saying, oh, you were just on CNN or whatever. So I asked Bradley Edwards, you represented Virginia Roberts Giuffre. You are well aware that Virginia Roberts Giuffre recanted claims that she made against Alan Dershowitz after nearly a decade of accusing Dershowitz of having been a recipient of Virginia Roberts Giuffre as a sex trafficking victim, meaning Giuffre claimed that on at least 6 occasions she had been trafficked to Dershowitz, and she described each individual instance in graphic, lurid detail. And then after nearly a decade, in 2022, she recanted the claims. And she also had this fictionalized memoir that you and your counsel eventually conceded was in fact fictionalized, where she made other grandiose claims against other prominent people, and so on and so forth. So I asked essentially, how is it that Virginia Roberts Giuffre at this event is being hailed as this unblemished, credible person when she has this demonstrable track record of having fabricated things? Because so many speeches referenced her as though she was this martyr, as though she was this saint. Her her brother or half brothers were there, 2 of them, and their wives, or at least one of their wives, crying for her. Um, uh, again, she's being treated like she's a Joan of Arc or something of the modern era, and none of this information is ever expressed. So Bradley Edwards says so there's sort of like a little bit of a hum going on in the crowd at the podium, and Bradley Edwards says, "We're not answering this question. Move on." So he's just blatantly saying he's not going to answer my question. So I said, "Oh, I mean, okay. So what else can I do at that point?" So he takes another question, and then what happens next? And you can find if you can see watch. I haven't watched the video, but I'm sure this is on video somewhere. Um, Ro Khanna then interjects. Ro Khanna comes back to the podium, addresses me, initiates an interaction with me, and Ro Khanna says something to the effect of, "To your address your question. Let's just have all the files." And I agree. I told him I agreed. But at the same time, you are lauding this person as though she's the pinnacle of credibility, which is just not consistent at all with facts. And then at that point, Capitol Police come over to me and say, "Hey, you got to go." And I notice that Ro Khanna's like, "No, you don't need to throw him out." Meaning Ro Khanna's trying to gesture to the Capitol Police, saying, "No, you don't need to throw me out." But the Capitol Police escort me out anyway. So I'm not going to resist. I'm not going to resist the police officers. So I am escorted out, and I just wait around the perimeter for a while. I have a bunch of people coming up to me saying, "Why were you thrown out? I mean, what was that about?" There was this lovely old lady who stood up for me, who I don't even think she fully knew who I was. But I took a little video of her that I posted on X. Um, PBS interviewed me about it. PBS didn't interview me about it. I talked to a PBS NewsHour correspondent about it. She wanted to exchange information. Some other media people interviewed me about it. I was on video, just giving my case, basically. And yeah, so I was thrown out. I mean, I didn't leave the entire premises. I just stayed on the perimeter, right? And then once the press conference was officially over, I was able to kind of meander back in. And I talked briefly to Thomas Massey, asked him a question about his legislation, which allows Pam Bondi, the Attorney General, to make a determination that certain Epstein-related materials can continue to be concealed on the grounds of national security. So I asked Thomas Massey, okay, it's like, why would you include that provision? What possible grounds could there be related to national security to continue concealing any Epstein files? And he gave the answer that, in order to get the requisite number of votes, a majority in the House, we had to add that provision, or else people wouldn't have voted for it. Okay. And then I asked Massey, okay. And then I start to ask Massey about having been thrown out. He's like, "Yeah, you were really rude." I'm like, "What?" People keep calling me rude. Okay, I grant. I'm not, I can be like maybe a little bit abrasive, but like I'm also not socially retarded, like completely. So I was only rude insofar I was asking a question that they didn't want answered, or that there was no good answer to. And I didn't interject and disrupt the press conference at all. Ro Khanna, like after Bradley Edwards said he wasn't going to answer my question, I didn't interject or interrupt. Ro Khanna came back to the podium and started another interaction with me. So how was I rude? I don't get it. I mean, I could have asked much ruder questions. This is ridiculous. I mean, people accuse me of fixating on Epstein. You should have seen this. I have photos. I'll post a bunch of them or more videos. This is the number one issue that the Congress is focused on after returning from August recess. After the July session was prematurely adjourned over Epstein. But I'm fixating on this. I'm trying to bring in just a modicum of any kind of critical examination of any of this. Otherwise, it's just a moral panic and a mass hysteria run completely rampant with no checks at all. So after I was thrown out, I went on I was just walking around the perimeter. There was other protesters, essentially. It was mostly anti-Trump protesters. So there are people holding signs. There's GOP means group of pedophiles. That's a new acronym of GOP. People, claiming that Trump was covering up pedophilia or Trump was a pedophile. And there was a huge, like multi-person signage thing talking about this woman, Katie Johnson. Okay, meaning Trump. I think the sign was something like Trump raped Katie Johnson or something like that. Now, who's Katie Johnson? Well, I happen to know. Katie Johnson was a one time was the apparent moniker of somebody who filed a lawsuit in 2016 accusing Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein of having violently raped her when she was 13 years old. And it came out that the lawsuit was basically engineered by a hoaxer, a legitimate fraudster named Norm Lubow, who was a former Jerry Springer Show producer and had cooked up previous hoaxes like involving celebrities in the past, like with Courtney Love and O.J. Simpson. So the whole thing was a fraud, a publicity stunt. And yet there were people here like protesting Trump for having raped this like fake person. So I'm just like talking to some of these people who are holding these signs, and the Capitol Police are following me. And I have some of this on audio. They're accusing me of interfering or like I'm violating some code. It's because I'm asking these people questions. Because the cop says I'm like trying to extract emotional responses from them or something. But I tell the cop, look, I'm going to comply with whatever command you give me. I'm not trying to be obstructive at all. Whatever you did, whatever you're commanding me to do, I will do. So I move along. I talk to some other people. The cop is still following me. He's still saying that I need to go. That I can't talk to these people just about the basis for their claims that Trump raped 13-year-old. And yeah, I have some of this on video. It's just stunning. And then I happen upon this guy, Ian Carroll, who's this big like social media personality, just another hoaxer essentially. He put out. I happen to have noted him or mentioned him briefly recently because back in March, after he had been on Joe Rogan, he put out this like really enticing, anticipatory tweet that there was sexual blackmail revelations about to drop on RFK Jr. And I'm the last person to rush to the defense of RFK Jr. I really dislike RFK Jr. Not for the typical vaccine reasons, but for other reasons, his misappropriation of his dopey family legacy and whatever. I really dislike him. However, that doesn't justify teasing non-existent sexual blackmail on the guy. And then when there's no imminent revelation, as you promised your legions of followers, just ghosting everybody on the topic. This was in March. I mentioned it in August. I'm like, hey, Ian, whatever happened to this sexual blackmail story you were teasing and like getting people to follow you on the basis of? And he gave it this whole like ridiculous, convoluted explanation. He was wearing a T-shirt, an Epstein list T-shirt. So I asked him, okay, where's the evidence? And it listed the supposed perpetrators, right, in the child sex trafficking ring, the prominent people. Like, okay, so give me what's your evidence that former Senate Majority Leader George Mitchell ever committed a sexual offense against a minor? It's just like he could hardly answer. It's just wild. So anyway, I still got a lot of good material. I would have liked to have gotten more. I would have liked to have extended interactions with particularly Bradley Edwards, some of the other purported victims. For example, two of the self-declared victims that spoke were Anushka DeGiorgio, and Annie Farmer. Annie Farmer wouldn't talk to me. I actually saw or tried to talk to Annie Farmer at the previous press conference. She wouldn't talk to me. She had her goons, her security, basically telling me to get lost. But what I would have asked both of them is, okay, so the two of you testified at the Ghislaine Maxwell trial. They were two of the four purported victims who testified at the 2021 Ghislaine Maxwell criminal trial. And the judge, and I've talked about this before, but the judge, Allison Nathan, who was otherwise extremely absurdly pro-prosecution, ended up having to direct the jury that they were not to consider anything that either Anushka DeGorgiou or any farmer allege happened to them as illegal sexual activity. They were not to regard any of the alleged sexual activity that these two were subjected to as illegal sexual activity for the purposes of convicting Maxwell. So, to the extent that those two were adjudicated in terms of their victimhood at all, they were adjudicated as not victims. But they're out here like, just as, survivors. We're supposed to respect and honor them. I'm sorry, these women made millions of dollars.
Like it's regulatory, something like that. So like,
They're like they're portrayed as downtrodden and like we have to side with the little guy. I don't know. They got millions of dollars from these settlements. In some cases, for having been adults, when they supposedly got ensnared in this child sex trafficking ring. So I would have loved to ask that question to the two of them. They were both there. They were both at the podium together at one point, actually. I didn't get a chance. I was hoping to be able to mill around after the press conference, but I got thrown out. Maybe I could have asked them after the press conference. I would have loved to ask Bradley Edwards. Okay, so is it true, as Ghislaine Maxwell revealed for the first time publicly, it seems, in her proffer interview with Todd Blanche, that the law firm that you worked at, that was headed by Scott Rothstein, who later absconded to Morocco because he was doing research as to whether there was an extradition treaty between the United States and Morocco. And he absconded because he was being charged with essentially running a Ponzi scheme out of this law firm that Bradley Edwards worked at. And part of his scheme was to tell prospective investors, look, we have all this material. We have all these bankers' boxes full of records and documents showing that we have the goods where we can sue. We can extract settlements from all these wealthy individuals for sexual misconduct with minors. And he was trying to do that with Epstein. And Bradley Edwards in his book claims that he wasn't involved, but I don't know if he wasn't involved. What was his involvement exactly? Can't just go based on his book. So I wanted to ask Bradley Edwards: can you confirm that it's true, as Ghislaine Maxwell alleged, that to the extent that anyone was blackmailed in this whole affair, it was Ghislaine Maxwell's boyfriend, post Epstein, Ted Waite, who was a multi-billionaire founder of Gateway Computer. And in around 2009, Maxwell says Ted Waite was contacted by the Rothstein firm and told that he needed to fork over $10 million, or else if he wanted to preempt Maxwell's name from appearing in Epstein-related litigation. That would have been an interesting question to ask. The Virginia Giuffre was certainly an interesting question to ask. I would love to ask Bradley Edwards, can you confirm what amount of money did Virginia Roberts Giuffre in total receive from all these settlements? I've seen estimates up to $30 million. Could be even more. I don't know. Who knows? Prince Andrew settlement. She had an initial Epstein settlement. She had a Maxwell settlement. She had the JP Morgan potentially settlement, Deutsche Bank, Epstein Victims Compensation Fund. This woman was fabulously wealthy. And there's a probate dispute going on in Australia over her estate that her brothers, who are so weepy and they were on NBC News crying, and one of them was crying again today. It's been reported that they're involved in this probate dispute over her estate. And I asked one of the brothers about it, and he was like, no comment. I don't know what you're talking about. So it's just wild. And you know why this is necessary? Not because this is some niche little preoccupation of mine. This is dominating congressional business right now. It's dominating the media. And members of Congress, they're all saying, this is only the beginning. They have more subpoenas going out. They're saying there's more victims that'll be coming out. This is not going anywhere, people. So as much as you might be fed up with me focusing on this or whatever, I'm just telling you what's going on. This is what's going on politically right now in the United States. It's just full-blown mass hysteria. It's not grounded in empirical reality. So yeah, I do feel viscerally obliged to cover it critically. Otherwise, there's going to be continued civil liberties abridgments, such as just the wanton defamation that goes on at these things. such as really egregious infringements on due process. The Maxwell trial basically occasioned the Sixth Amendment to the United States Constitution being held in, being basically being suspended because these so-called victims, at least one of them that was here I saw, were allowed to testify under fake names. Anushka. There was another supposed victim who was here, Shantae Davies, right? Another one. She was 21 or 22 when she encountered Epstein and Maxwell. She denied for years that she was a victim. She was quoted in the original Gawker story in 2015 by this fraud Nick Bryant, who was also here and was trying to like mix it up. I mean, in fairness, I wanted to mix it up with him as well, given his fabrications. But even in that Gawker piece, this woman, Shantae Davies, like denies basically that she was victimized by Epstein. And she did like softcore porn type stuff, or I don't know. They hauled her out. They I mean, I couldn't hear all of it. I have to go listen back in the audio, the video later. But there was one supposedly new victim. I think her name was Martina. I couldn't hear her well, so I don't know exactly what she said. But I thought I might have heard her talking about how she couldn't remember things. Like she was talking about how she couldn't remember. She might. It sounded like she was talking about recovered memories to me. I could be wrong about that. I have to go listen to exactly what she said. But like, really, now we're in the recovered memory phase. There's another woman who I saw being interviewed on NBC News last night who was also here. I unfortunately didn't get a chance to talk to her. I would have loved to. It was like, yeah, I just kind of, I did meet Epstein. She says claims that she was 14 when she was recruited by other girls to go to Epstein's Palm Beach house. She won't describe what actually occurred to her at the house. But then she went years and years not thinking really anything about this. And then by 2019, she was implored to regard this as a big deal. And she forgot about it essentially. But then by 2019, when Epstein, was arrested and then dies in prison, she's then told that it's a big deal and she has to get involved. And I'm pretty sure she got a settlement. She alluded to that. But this is like someone saying that this had no real effect on her for years until like the mass hysteria erupted. Oh, so what am I going to do? I'm going to, yeah, Richard Hanani was here for some of it too, and another friend of ours. What do I do now? Well, I'm going to go back, I guess, and listen to my audio reportage and see what I come up with. I'm going to be on News Nation tonight, hopefully. That's scheduled anyway. So I don't know when it airs. I think it might air at 9 p.m. So if you get News Nation or you care to tune in, I'm sure it'll be online as well. I respect. And that's it. Look, I mean, it's just insane. I'm not please, before anybody tries to accuse me of being traumatized or trying to make it all about me. No, I'm just relaying to you guys what happened. I attended a press conference that I was invited to attend by the host. And I asked a question that they didn't want to answer, meaning that Bradley Edwards, the lawyer and ringleader who orchestrated so much of this, Congressman Khanna then tried to engage with me. So I engaged back with him, and then next thing I know, I'm being thrown out. So there you have it. And I will see you later. So stay sane. That's my new sign off. Bye bye.